All right, so now I want to talk about licks, guitar licks that kind of my little go-tos, stuff I put into guitar solos, you know, when I'm improvising, because not all the solos are completely written or anything, you know. I generally like to approach stuff with a structure in mind, you know, and I might have little key phrases that I like to utilize, but there's, you know, for the most part, the solos are kind of, you know, I mean, it's improvised. I'm going to go through some of my signature licks, though, that I'm known to use quite a bit. So in the song Bitch on the Run, I like to do this climb. It's kind of like a double stop bend climb thing where I go all the way up an octave, and then when I get to the top, I kind of do this rock and roll Chuck Berry-esque lick where it's... I'll try and show it to you in context and then slow it down to show you how I'm doing it. But the riff is... you know, however you want to resolve that, I guess. But that's one that I kind of like to build off of, you know, something. I don't do it every night, but, you know, the drums usually, you know, my drummer usually follows me when I go into that movement. We just kind of hit together. So breaking down what that is, it's a bend on the G string, and you know, you're kind of holding down the B and the E with your index finger while using your ring finger and your middle finger to kind of support that bend. But I sort of anchor my thumb up here because it gives me a little bit more control, and it gives me, I just, you know, I feel like this is the part where I'm really digging in, so there's not a lot of finesse going into it. You just got to kind of fight the guitar and get that bend. And I like to go behind the beat because, you know, you don't want it to sound, it just feels better when it's a little bit behind, you know, what the drums are doing. It's got a little more swagger that way. But this is kind of how I achieve that bend. And then you give it a little vibrato, just kind of shake it, you know, push it up and then shake it. And really, I mean, yeah, the note that to me stands out, the top note, is that, and not so much the bottom two, but they're in there just enough to kind of, you know, give it a little more meat than just. So you want it in there just a little bit, even if it's not, you know, as loud as that bottom note. But. Play with a lot of feeling, that's all that matters. And then when you get up to the top, that kind of Chuck Berry, I hear a lot of guitar players do it. This is just my own little take on it. Not really much of a spin, it's just this. So you hit that, and then 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 2. So. So that's kind of, you know, that's a lick that I'm known to do, and then I try and, you know, build the melodic phrasing back into it. Like that song has, I talk a lot about melodic phrasing and bringing it into the solo, but the actual melody on that song is da do 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 do. Well, in key though. So I try to bring that back in after kind of, you know, that's a little bit of like a noodly shred moment back into a melodic motif. And I feel like that just sort of, you know, ties the solo together. So another song that has a really melodic solo in it, but with really fun riffs and licks in between, you know, the melody, is Black Wind Howlin'. It's one of my favorite guitar songs to play live. That's the riff. When I go to the solo, we kind of build and then descend on these chromatic scales. So we walk up and then the band starts walking down, and then we walk up and we walk back down. And it kind of builds, and then, you know, it keeps building and building through the course of the solo as we take it up to the octave and then we bring it back down. I really like taking people with guitar solos to the precipice, the point where they're like, I think it's finished, and then you just take them a little bit further. It's like, you know, it's this little bit of like, I don't know, you feel like it's gonna be done, and then it's not. So it's not too long, it's just that you're holding on for just the right amount of time. So, but with Black Wind Howlin', I've got a couple cool riffs that I play. One of the first ones I'd say is this kind of, I'm going to set you up with the riff and then show you how I played this lick in between. So that one, you know, I'm a big fan of bends. I mean, that's the whole point of, you know, to me that's the most emotive thing in a guitar solo is the bend, and it's how you bend it, and it's how long you hold the bend. You know, you want to give it like it's not something you can just, you know, follow within a certain amount of time. You don't want it to feel robotic. So, you know, hold on a little longer than maybe you would think, you know. Instead of going, which sounds a little mechanical against a drum, you know, a drum beat, or, you know, with a band, you got to give it a little like again, like a little swagger. And that one I kind of like to do it's not really a vibrato, but it's just sort of like just a little shake, like just pulls it just out of tune. It's a little jerky, honestly, like the movement I make, it kind of like I feel my whole shoulder sort of go into that one. But that's one of the first descending riffs in the song, and so it starts setting up this melodic thing, like, okay, you know, where the song really just sort of hangs around the one, where it's you start getting these other melodies that are going down and up, and it just creates more interest, and, you know, shows you that there's, okay, we're going somewhere with this. The next riff that's kind of fun, I've been getting into, like, of course, we talk so much about this hybrid picking thing, but I use it so much in my solos, and it's a little bit subtle, especially when you have fuzz kicking. It might not be the most audible, but I like to do this. That little walk up, you know, you take it slow, but I'm hitting the octave in 3 different places. So I'm hitting that E, 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 and creating like a rhythmic pattern with it to build on. So you start kind of slow. And just, you know, you're creating like for me, it's like it goes against the straight drum beat. So, you know, you're forming a pocket, and then you're giving yourself space for the second half, which is when I speed it up and, you know, do something cool with it. So I'm going to slow that down for you and show you how I'm doing it. slowed down version of it. Really, I kind of double up. I double the speed on the way down that. So it's a it's a little busy, but. You're kind of back crescendoed into another part of the solo where we just kind of hang on the one and we're not walking up, we're not walking down, we're just holding that one, building more tension until we want to either descend or ascend chromatically. So another part of that song that I think is pretty cool is just really meaningful bends. I talked about a little bit in the first passage, but you know, trying to let that low string ring out. You know, I probably could play like, this is why I knock guitars out of tune, because I'm really squeezing the hell out of it. But I think in that moment, in those kind of solos, that's when you're like, you really got to just dig in and, you know, mean it. So, you know, those are some fun riffs I like to play in that song. It's got some, you know, some scheduled melodic moments that I like to follow. Oh, another cool. All right, this will be the last one for this song. Another crescendo moment where we're walking up, kind of in the same vein, but again, a different voicing, so it's different, makes it interesting. Is this. Same kind of key sing, you know, the same motif, but like. I've been working on getting my hand over the top and trying to keep that low thing going while I'm doing something, you know, different down at the bottom with the high notes. So you just kind of flip your hand over the top. I mean, that's a Jimi Hendrix thing, right? I'm not the most eloquent with it, but you know, it's just another way to get that low note in there. If you can't get to it, you know, by doing some kind of hybrid picking, you know, you got this for a reason. So those are some fun licks for that song. We could talk about Killer Be Kind, because that's probably, though it's not the bluesiest chord progression, I think the top of the song is incredibly bluesy. It kind of gives me like a bit of a Thrill Is Gone kind of a throwback. But then it goes to these different chords in the chorus. But I definitely do a lot of like kind of B.B. King-esque licks in the top of that song. So we can talk about phrasing. Just stuff like that, like little passing phrases. You know, B.B. is one of my favorite guitar players because of the fact that he gave so much space to what he was playing. I mean, it was the amount of space that he would put between the phrases was so emotional, and it just gave life to his guitar. I mean, if you really think about the guitar, you know, think about, okay, if you were going to sing and you didn't stop to take a breath, how robotic and strange that would be. So for me, the guitar is similar. You know, when you're doing solos, you have to stop and take a breath because it just sounds, it's just too robotic if you don't. So like in a solo, for me, it's like, let it just live there. It's okay to let it live for like a little while. Instead of like just kind of cramming as many notes as possible into a phrase, think of it as if you were singing it. You would be taking breaths and you'd be taking pauses. There'd be like a conversational aspect to it. I think that's one of the things that I love so much about his guitar playing, is that it was a conversation between his singing, and the guitar was its own voice and entity entirely. So this brings me now to, I've been talking so much about B.B. King and phrasing and taking pauses and breaths in my playing, and he definitely was a massive influence to me as a guitar player and a performer, and other influences for me. I grew up listening to rock and roll, and one of my favorite guitar players was, and it still is, Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I mean, he wrote so many iconic guitar riffs and came up with these beautiful melodic solos. I'm so obsessed with melodic solos that are just iconic, and everybody knows them. And I feel like he's one of the best out there for that iconic solo, guitar solos. Keith Richards is another favorite guitar player of mine. I sort of came to learn about blues through my rock and roll heroes, because I started looking at who their influences were, and I just discovered this limitless genre and instrumentalists and musicians. And one of my favorite North Mississippi guitar players, I love the whole Fat Possum roster, but like Junior Kimbrough, and I love R.L. Burnside, creating some of those open tuning. I think a lot of like my playing style, I've really absorbed or tried to absorb a lot of that Delta North Mississippi influence. Like, I just kind of felt like North Mississippi and rock and roll came so hand in hand. There was such a raw sort of punk attitude about those songs, and so I came to really idolize a lot of those guitar players. Another guitar player that was massively influential, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan, just one of the first real amazing guitar slingers I was hearing on the radio, and I felt like his playing was so emotive and passionate, and that really is the thing that I relate to and aspire to be myself, is emotive and passionate. So I'm attracted to those type of players. Freddie King is another one of my favorite guitar players. Came up with some just really incredible, funky Texas blues songs that just, when I was starting to play guitar, I'd sit there and watch his DVD. Like I had DVDs, and I just sit there and try and figure it out. And he played with such passion and made it look so easy, and it was so aggressive and just edgy and strong. And I really relate and aspire to be like that.